Well, all right, welcome back to Morning Joe, 31 past the hour, live here in Washington. Joining us now, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
All right, so a couple of weeks ago, you and I stood here and we were talking about the preciousness of our democracy. You have moved forward with this step toward impeachment. How do you plan, though, to handle the Republicans who still say there is nothing to see here?
Well, first let me say that this is no cause for any joy. This is a very sad time for our country. The impeachment of a president is as serious as our congressional responsibilities can be, apart from declaring war or something. And so we have to be very prayerful, and we always have to put country before party. But I would say at this time, I would say to Democrats and Republicans, we have to put country before party very clearly in the public view. And this is about the Constitution of the United States. The clarity of the president's actions is compelling and gave us no choice but to move forward. Our founders, in the darkest days of the Revolution, Thomas Paine said, "The times have found us." Well, we think the times have found us now to protect what they fought for, our democracy, our independence, and then a constitution with checks and balances, not a monarchy, as Ben Franklin said, a republic. And all of that is at stake. The separation of powers is the genius of the Constitution. 3 separate co-equal branches of government to be a check on each other. This is as serious as it gets when it comes to protecting the Constitution of the United States. The oath of office that we take, I think the president violated that oath. But sadly, we have to follow the facts, and the facts are so dragging, but in other words, to corroborate what we have heard so that the public has a comfort level of what we have to do.
And so we were talking before, and I talked to Mika about this when it looked like we were moving to impeachment as a country. And I went around, it felt like I'd been punched in the gut, not because I didn't believe that we didn't need to move in the direction of an inquiry, but because I remember the Clinton impeachment. I remember voting for 2 of the 4 articles. I remember thinking after the Supreme Court and the Arkansas Supreme Court had stripped him of his law license because of perjury. At that point, I thought, okay, that's fine. It still stuck with me, though, for 20 years because it is such a wrenching process. But I must say also, though, it is in the Constitution. Our founders looked at this as a constitutional remedy for an executive that our elected leaders felt was, in fact, abusing the Constitution of the United States.
Well, you and I differed on the Clinton because that was about personal behavior that he was involved punished for.
We'll save that debate, but this is about national security. This is about the national
security of our country. And the President of the United States being disloyal to his oath of office, jeopardizing our national security, and jeopardizing the integrity of our elections. It covers it so much. So again, take us where the facts will lead us. I'm very excited. And I'm concerned about some of the president's comments about the whistleblower. One of our chairmen, Elijah Cummings, is a chairman of the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, a master of everything in government, a particularly unsurpassed leader on the subject of inspectors general and the integrity of their work, and how much he respects that, as well as making sure that our whistleblowers do not have retaliation, because they're a very important part of uncovering wrongdoing in our government. And Elijah has been just. But
the president yesterday suggested that they should be treated as traitors and should possibly be executed.
Well, you know, it's really sad. We have to be very prayerful. I pray for the president all the time. I pray for the safety of his family, and wish that he would pray for the safety of other families and do something courageous on guns. But I also pray that God will illuminate him to see right from wrong. It's very problematic. So we have a situation where members will have to, no one ever ask anybody to vote this way or that. This is everyone's individual decisions, and our members came to their own decisions in their own time about this. But when it was such a compelling national security issue, it's just, he gave us no choice.
Let me ask you about the Attorney General.
He's gone rogue.
Mika and I have had an ongoing debate for years. I've always said the institutions are strong. They will hold. We will be fine. She's been far more concerned. But this Attorney General now has me questioning. How do the institutions hold if the Attorney General's gone rogue? If there is somebody in the White House this morning watching, and they are watching, and they understand that they violated an executive order and misclassified information for political purposes and could be facing legal penalties, where do they go when the Attorney General himself was mentioned in the whistleblower complaint at the top and buried it? Where do they go?
Well, I think where they're going is a cover-up of the cover-up. And that's really very sad for them. And that to have a Justice Department go so rogue, well, they have been for a while.
Right.
And now it just makes matters worse. That the Attorney General was mentioned, that the President was mentioned, and yet the Justice Department directed the Director of National Intelligence to take this to the White House.
Which he said yesterday was unprecedented.
Unprecedented. And he's a person of great reputation. I felt sorry for him because here he is having to I don't know what. I mean,
Right. I
I think that what he did broke the law. The law is very clear. When this information comes, it's deemed credible and of urgent concern by the Inspector General.
Right.
The Director of National Intelligence shall convey the information to Congress. Now, this is my wheelhouse, as I said to the President. 25 years of experience in intelligence, a long time ago, starting as a member, being the ranking member, being Gang of Four even before I was in the leadership. I was there when we wrote the whistleblower laws. I was there when we wrote the law establishing the Office of Director of National Intelligence. That's only since 2004. Shall convey that information to the Congress, and poor soul.
And instead he
couldn't.
took it to an Attorney General who is mentioned as a possible part of the conspiracy.
And the president's lawyers, when the president was mentioned, not highly unusual, unique, wrong.
Well, there are several steps here, and I know you're trying to keep this focused. And by the way, I also know that you're doing a lot of other things, still trying to legislate. We'll be talking in a few moments about the effort to lower the cost of drugs. But what do you make of the movement of these conversations into this more secure server? And I know this is focused, but are you concerned about other conversations that might be in there?
Well, that's interesting, and it's as part of a cover-up, but I think we have to stay focused, as far as the public is concerned, on the fact that the President of the United States used taxpayer dollars to shake down the leader of another country for his own political gain. The rest of it is ancillary, that is to say, it shows how wrong they thought it was, so they would move it. But what's interesting about this, for me now, is that people say, well, this is all people will talk about now. Well, this is all people were talking about anyway. But with Mr. Schiff, I mean, we're so proud of Adam Schiff, and this will be focused in his committee because it is an intelligence matter, a national security matter, and our other chairmen are excellent, and they have, most of their cases are in court now. We're waiting further decisions. We've won at certain levels. But now that is where it needs to be, on course, we can focus on what the public can understand more about what we are doing otherwise. We promised for the people that we would lower the cost of prescription drugs, and that is what we're doing. That we would build the infrastructure in America in a green way, and that's what we're hoping to do, and that the President will support that. And cleaner government. There were 3 things. I think we can get cooperation from the Republicans on lowering prescription drug prices. I hope so. Building the infrastructure of America. I hope so. I don't think we'll get any cooperation on cleaner government.
Well, it's interesting that the president yesterday was complaining that he couldn't move forward on guns because of this impeachment inquiry, and yet you all have already passed the legislation. Like so many other bills, they're sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk, and that it's really become a legislative graveyard for one reform after another reform that you all have passed. It actually, many of them would be supported by the majority of Republicans.
Right. And we were not looking for a fight. When we put forth our agenda, it was where can we have the most common ground. 90% of the people support gun violence prevention, H.R. 8, our bill. If the president is too cowardly to support gun violence protection to protect our children, if he's too cruel to protect our dreamers, if he's too in denial to understand the climate issue, the list goes on and on. Those are matters for the election. They have nothing to do with the impeachment. But from our standpoint, while Mitch McConnell may call himself proudly the Grim Reaper, these issues are alive and well in the public.
Right.
And if will be a price to pay, we'll make these issues too hot to handle. We're not going away until we pass legislation to protect the American people from gun violence.
Let's talk about timing. You talked about elections. Of course, the Iowa caucuses and the presidential primaries start up in February. This is obviously something. We don't want to have split screens of people going to vote or going to caucus in Iowa while impeachment's being debated on the floor. Doesn't that consolidate the calendar? Since this is a narrowly focused issue, doesn't this need to be completed one way or the other by the end of the year?
Well, I think that we should move with purpose and expeditiously, not hastily, though. And the matter is in the hands of the Intelligence Committee under the leadership of Adam Schiff, of whom we're very, very proud, and our members of the committee. I know you had Sean Patrick Maloney on earlier. We're very proud of him. And so they will take the time that they need. And we won't have the calendar be the arbiter, but we do, it doesn't have to drag on. And again, we're in court and on many of these cases, whether it's the president's taxes, his bank accounts, his accounting, emoluments, a whole slew of other things. I think this probably will be done before the courts. Who knows the timing of the courts? But again, it's no use to just say by such and such a date. But looking at the, shall we say, the material that the administration is giving us, they are actually speeding up the process.
The decision itself to move forward, we had Kellyanne Conway, who I guess is still at the White House, at the Atlantic Festival yesterday saying Nancy Pelosi did the worst thing a woman in power can ever do, which is change her mind in a matter of hours on something so significant, acceding to the angry mob, insisting that she move toward impeachment.
Why would I have to comment on something she said? But the fact
that is the correct answer, by the way.
I didn't even know she was still there.
That is the correct answer, yes.
But let me just say this. There wasn't a question of changing of mind. People say that to me, when did you change your mind? I didn't change my mind. The facts changed the situation, and they cannot be ignored no matter how sexist she wants to be. The fact is that the revelation of the president's unconstitutional behavior in his own political interest changed the mind of the public. You see the polls
like
changing.
Trying to make this about you.
Yeah,
and
well,
what you're trying to say
fine.
is...
I welcome it. I'm ready. I said all along, I said, I think this is an important statement. We have to weigh the equities when we're talking about a statement of impeachment. We weigh the equities. I never thought he was worth it to have something so divisive to the country. But really, the step that the cavalier attitude, or the irresponsible, whatever, illegal practically. But the fact is that We're talking about our oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, checks and balances. This is a very important moment for us because I don't trust what could happen in the courts of his appointees as to whether they will rule and say that the Congress of the United States does have the right of oversight in the Constitution, oversight of the executive branch. The president says, Article 2 says, I can do whatever I want. No, it doesn't. You're not a monarch. It's a republican, if we can keep it. A republic, if we can keep it.
A republic, if we can keep it. It's so interesting. Over the past 20, 30 years, we've heard people every couple of years go, this is the year of the woman in Washington. This is the year. And I'm sitting there going, okay, great, I get it. Every 3 or 4 years, when a couple of women are elected, we're going to have this narrative. Earlier this week, we saw one woman elected in 2018 after another woman elected in 2018 who had served in the military or who was a prosecutor or who had served in the intel community, going on and dispassionately explaining, these freshman Democrats, dispassionately explaining why even though Donald Trump had won their district, and this was not the politically smart move to make, it was the right move to make. And I remember going to bed that night going, my God, this is not only the year of the woman, but we will look back on this like we look back on, for instance, the Watergate class of '74. These women are going to change American politics forever, and there will be a president or two or three out of these women, and daughters like mine will see. We are seeing this week history unfold before our eyes.
It's beautiful, and we're so very, very proud of them because they are honoring their oath of office, and their national security background informs them as to how dangerous this is. I had said early on, if and when we have to do this, we will be ready. And we are ready because of the integrity of our members, because of the leadership of our committee chairs, and now in terms of the Intelligence Committee, because of the preparation that we have made, and we'll continue to make that during the district work periods. People go home and listen to their constituents, If you could speak to those who maybe are still struggling with why this was so wrong, and we're talking about the focus of shaking down the leader of Ukraine to get information on a political opponent, and by the way, having hundreds of millions of dollars in aid held up. Could you explain to those as to why this is wrong, but also extremely dangerous? Let me just say that I fully appreciate the need for a president of the United States to have conversations with leaders of other countries, and that some of that may want to be held close to the vest as part of his job. But I don't think it's part of the president's job to shake down leaders of other countries using taxpayer dollars to have them do something that is in his political benefit. It is wrong for any foreign government to interfere in our elections. And here you have the President of the United States asking for that. So it is, again, now we're engaged in a cover-up of that, but the cover-up of the cover-up, two wrongs do not make a right. And the president's going to have to answer that, and they know how wrong it is. So it's wrong for, as we saw with Russian interference. And by the way, I think Russia has a hand in this, by the way. But we saw with the Russian disruption of our election last time, their interference, 100% confidence of the intelligence community, high confidence of the intelligence community that the Russians disrupted our election. That was wrong. The integrity of our elections is central to our democracy. So what the president did in inviting outside intervention into our election is, it goes beyond the pale. So that, and then to use what was in a bipartisan way passed by Congress to have this assistance to go to the to Ukraine is wrong. So actually we have a double whammy because he's again violating the Constitution by overriding an act of Congress, which is the power of the purse of Congress.
Can we add that Republicans criticized Barack Obama for years for not providing that sort of aid to Ukraine, and now a Democratic House did exactly that, and it was a Republican president who delayed it.
So in terms of your question, it's wrong because it violates the integrity of our elections. It's wrong because we have taken oaths to protect and defend, and he is undermining our national security by withholding funds that Congress in a bipartisan way had passed in our national security interest.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.